Hello everyone and welcome back to the Grimm Chronicles. My name is Kathy Grimm and the channel is The Grimm Reader. This is episode 23 of 2022. Had a wonderful day yesterday. Getting to know Claudia and seeing the sights in Freiburg was absolutely delightful. And I'm really glad that we got together and I hope to do it again. It was really nice getting to know Claudia and having good discussions, and we made an interesting video that she'll put up on her channel, and yeah, all a perfect day. This is actually my last chronicle in this Airbnb. I'll be moving out day after tomorrow, packing up tomorrow, everything, and going back to the hotel where I was in the beginning, different room probably, for the last week in Germany. And I'm gonna relax. I mean, I might go to, there's a museum I'm interested in seeing in Wiesbaden, but on the other hand, I kind of just like spending the last days hanging out and being with my sister and seeing some people as well from other friends, but not doing too much. Kind of just taking in the last days of Germany before I return to apparently very hot and sticky Ohio. A lot of places in the US are struggling with high humidity and heat. It's pretty hot here too, but it always cools down really nicely during the nighttime. And so the mornings are cool, which is so nice to have a cool morning and a cool evening. And then even if it gets hot during the day, it doesn't always get that hot. Like yesterday was fine. It wasn't really that hot at all. I think today was a little bit hotter. I just had one errand to run downtown. And yeah, so the weather's been actually pretty perfect. Let's talk about the books. My audiobook is really interesting. N.K. Jemisin's The Fifth Season, so science fiction, sort of dystopian, but adult dystopia. I guess a parallel Earth. And it focuses on a race, I guess, in quotes, of people who are called origins and who have the power, I guess, to cause severe climactic or, Earth-related disruptions. So I'm trying to think. So they can do earthquakes, and then they can do volcanoes, and then oftentimes the people talk about icing people, like turning them to ice, I guess. So they're able to intervene in the climate in a kind of destructive way to the point where they can wipe out whole cities. And Alba Seriella posted a really interesting comment about, precisely because it focuses on people who are able to do this, she found it hard to listen to because it causes PTSD. And I actually think she has a point, from a sort of more just, if you detach from the feelings about, but sort of still take them into account, if you catch my drift. Well, how do we? And the thing is, she has kind of focused on this race. I keep calling it a race. I don't know, for lack of a better term. And we are supposed to feel something for them, something positive, I would say, or they're fleshed out as the main characters. And yet these are people who, with not too much. And another point is that they have a hard time controlling this power that they have, but they can wipe out entire cities. And I remember even before the comment, it did give me pause, and I kept thinking, wait, so these are people who could just like kill a whole city just quickly like that? That's kind of, and yet they're the heroes and heroines, or heroines, I guess, of this novel. I thought that's a little weird, and I kept thinking about it, and I think for me, I don't know how one would do this because I'm not a writer, I'm not creative in that way. Is perhaps it would work better if they had the ability to do something equally positive, not just negative. Maybe that would change the dynamic she's going for. Maybe she wants us to be to feel positive feelings for these, and you can't help it, sort of. But then I keep thinking, but wait, this is a person who can, kill people just like that. And I mean, one of the major threads of the novel is that they have to be trained, and it's all about disciplining the power. They need to be trained in order to be able to control this power that they have, and have not do that, not let it just kind of take over them and do bad things. I don't think it's completely successful, but it is interesting. And it works fairly well as an audiobook. I do find myself sort of drifting in and out and finding some sections more enjoyable than others or more interesting than others. And sometimes the writing, she does have a few ticks in her writing that may sometimes get a little annoying. People always doing the same kind of little things, like this one woman's always licking her lips, and it's not kind of sexual or anything. It's just, I think she's showing her thinking about something or ruminating, and it's almost like a little, she's always doing this. Take a drink every time she's licking her lips. I think it's a little annoying. But I still think, and what I guess the most experimental part of the novel is the point of view and the fact that there's 3 different narrative strands and they all have a different point of view. And one of the main ones is a second person narrative. So you. And you get used to it. But it is unusual to have a second person narrative for such a long time in the book. I think if the whole book was just that might get a bit much. But then it goes to the other ones and they're third person, or I think they're third person. I think they're first person. I'll have to check. Maybe one of them is first person. So that's going quite well. I'm almost at the end. It's not a very long novel, and I'm glad it's definitely something different from Crossroads and even the Jemisin, the Stephen Erikson long fantasy novels that I've been listening to. Moving on into the text books that I'm reading, books. So I put the Lang aside because it just wasn't doing it for me. That was on the Kindle too, and I really just don't like reading on my iPad that much. I have it with me, but I'm glad I took it so I could finish the Zola. The Zola book novel. But other than that, I can't settle into a cozy read with my iPad. And so while I was walking around at the secondhand bookstore, I did come across a whole bunch of Elizabeth Bowen novels. Now I was gonna maybe go back and get the other ones that I saw there, but then I decided, well, if I want them, I can get them in the States too. I don't really need to get them here and schlep them with me. So I have started this one, Friends and Relations. Now she's pretty early. She's a mid-century, early 20th century writer. In 1931, and considering it's 1931, it's actually pretty interesting. It's a very sort of, what do you call this? Gesellschaftsroman. It's like a society novel. It's what it says is it's a drawing room comedy. So it's very British, but she has an interesting oblique style that I do like. You have to be careful though when you read it because you miss things. Little hints and nuances, and people are very strange. This one young woman is very odd. She's like 15, but she's obsessed with wanting to be acknowledged as someone in society, and she's always doing these things that 15-year-olds really shouldn't do. She goes and calls people that she's met at a wedding as if she were an adult, and she's not really. And I wonder how it all works with back in the Jane Austen days. Women had to, upper middle class women, it was all about, were they out yet? And I wonder how that's playing in here too. Maybe not. Maybe they're supposed to be. Maybe it's a sign of them not really being part of the gentility that she's able to pretend. She actually pretends to be someone else on the phone. It's kind of silly. But it's going quite well. I have to read it when I've been kind of sleepy, and when I can tell when I get sleepy, it's like, oh, this is getting hard to keep up with. But it's a good read. Very sort of English. And I haven't given up on Golden Pot, the strange story about our student Anselmus and he's basically fallen in love with a snake-like being, but it's also connected to a woman, a young girl. It's just such a weird story, and I'll get back to you when I haven't gotten that far. I'm on page 36 because I was started the other one instead. But so that's just going along too. And then we come to the 3 little books that they're very odd ones. I found them at the pretty nice free bookshelf that I went past on Sunday. It's near church, and I almost couldn't help but try and neatify it a little bit because it was getting kind of messy. And there were actually 2 books that I didn't bring, but because they were thicker. There was a nice edition of Shakespeare, dual language edition. That would have been nice. And what was the other one? Oh, it was Felix Kohl, a Thomas Mann novel, but too big. So the ones I took, so these are 3 books. A nice Surkamp edition of a German short story writer, pretty well thought of, Marie Luise Kaschnitz. Now, what are her dates? Early 20th century too, I would say. Well, this is later. This is 1969. And they're strange little stories. They're sort of gothic. And I need to reread one. It's called Vogel Rock, so bird rock. And I was like, well, rock in German, the word rock is skirt, strangely enough. I think it's related to frock or something. But rock, in this case, is a type of bird. There's a and it's not rook. I don't think it's a connection to rook either, but it's some kind of mythological bird called a rock, R-O-C. And it's almost like, sort of like a Kafka story. So this bird shows up in her place and seems to want to stay in her apartment, and she wants to get rid of him. And he gets bigger and bigger. Or he sort of gets bigger. She leaves him. I'm not doing a very good job of summarizing, but it's an odd story. She leaves him because she can't get him out to leave. And there's this sort of strange sort of scenes where she's with other people, but she can't bring herself to tell them about the bird, to the point where you sort of wonder, well, is he really there? Or is he a figment of her imagination? But apparently not. And it is sort of a nice juxtaposition between her very mundane descriptions of her life, waking up, making lunch, reading newspaper in bed, and then suddenly there's a bird there. So there's this kind of the surreal and the real kind of bumping up against each other. And I do think these scenes where she doesn't tell the other people are important. And then it ends with the bird sort of even bigger. This is a very short story. It's like 10 pages, not even, maybe 10 pages. Yeah, it's 10, 11 pages. She gets him to leave, but by this time he's even bigger. He seems to have gotten bigger. And see, so there's a scene where the bird tries to come closer to her, and then she kind of pushes him away. It's actually, I'm having it's almost a little bit Carter-esque, Angela Carter, although not quite, but I wonder if there's a connection there. And then the bird is, I have to read it again, but the bird leaves, and she, at the very end, there's this scene where she stretches her arms out towards the bird and cries about wanting him to come back. So she kind of pivots to deciding she wanted the bird to be that with her. So there's definitely like a bird-human relationship going on here of a sort, and that's what's making me think of Carter a little bit. It's an interesting writer, kind of subtle. Not bad for a free little book, and it's in good condition, and there's no markings. The other two are much more niche, and they're strange books, but I think I am going to take them. They're very narrow. So the first one is a book about a copper artist, a Kupferstich, a painter and an artist, and he did lots of drawings like this, 18th century, and his name is pretty well known, probably the most famous copper. I don't know what's the English word for a Kupferstich artist. Chodowieki, Daniel Chodowieki, and I kind of have been looking at it, but not really dipping into it. And so it's sort of a biography of him, but it's also the subtitle is. It's part of a series called Berlin in the Arts. It's the first volume. And it says Daniel Chodowieki and the artistic discovery of Berlin bourgeois everyday life. So he's connected to kind of sociological studies of everyday life in Berlin. And these artists' drawings kind of depict that. And he's going to go talk about it. And so the one thing that I did find, there's lots of arts, it's all, none of it's black and white, but I do like the pictures, you know, being a German studies type person. They're very interesting. And sometimes he's not these ones, but he does also do satirical ones, a little bit like Hogarth, but not quite. But you know, really nice paintings and sketches, not paintings, drawings. And the one that I thought was, in terms of the social life, was interesting is this one. It's called The Christmas Celebration, and it's from 1799, and it's a picture of how Germans celebrated Christmas in 1799. And so what you see there, and he talks about this, is you don't see a tree yet, even though it says here tree. He says we missed the Christmas tree that has been documented in Berlin for 1780, but hadn't pushed its way to the forefront. And so the typical thing to do was to put up a sort of Gestell, a framework upon which you hang the gifts. Because Germans even have a special word for the moment of gift giving at Christmas called Die Bescherung. It's always Christmas Eve, not Christmas Day. And they do it kind of this aha moment of display. Do you display the gifts? They still do that a little bit under the tree. I mean, in the Anglo-Saxon tradition, there's a little bit of that, but it's kind of interesting because it's more like the wrapped gifts. And see, here they just have the gifts unwrapped, but all kind of like, it's like a window shopping. And I thought it's interesting because it sort of shows how it's rather materialistic. And we always think of, you know, the real meaning of Christmas, not about materialism, but the gift giving is a big part of it. It's a part of the tradition. Not to be like, say it's okay to be completely commercialized. I'm trying to see what it says here about the gift giving. Yeah, the presents are hung up and displayed. And he does point out that this is a move away from depicting the birth of Christ. Chodowieki, as one of the first people, displayed how Germans actually celebrated Christmas and sort of de-emphasizing the religious, I guess, in a certain sense. Or kind of like hinting at the new religion, greed. And it's funny how German Christmas is a weird mixture of, it's as if, I kind of like this, it's sort of a weird thing to say, but it's acknowledging that people do like to have gifts and sort of, but making it a part of the culture and not overemphasizing it. It's part of the tradition. You give, you know the kids want new gifts and toys, and so you make a whole big deal about it. But then you also make a whole big deal about the food and going to church for a lot of people too. It's like every part of the tradition has its place, and there's nothing that's overemphasized, even though I guess for the kids, the gifts are important. Let's face it, it's Christmas. Anyway, I thought it's really interesting, and it made me sort of really want to take the book home because I think it's a good book. It's interesting. So it's a sociological study on using this man's artwork. The third book is a weird one. Very strange book. For one thing, it's been rebound. This is not how the book originally appeared. And so I'm sort of wondering who did this and where it came from and when was it done. That's the first thing that's interesting about the book. And so the actual book is this, another art one, German painters of the early Romantic. And so back in the day when I thought I would do more research on this stuff, I did study early Romanticism. So Novalis and the Schlegels in the German context. And so these are the painters connected with early German Romanticism. So Caspar David Friedrich, the Nazarenes, who were the German pre-Raphaelite group who sort of modeled themselves after earlier painters. That's a Caspar David Friedrich. And unfortunately, none of the pictures in here are in color. So it's a really interesting art book. This is a really interesting picture that I'll show you. I don't know this artist. Show you. So yeah. And so it's been rebound, and then the last thing I'll say, and I don't want to make too big a deal of it, but is the insert says this. So it says here, für Frau von der Leyen. So that's the same last name as Ursula von der Leyen, who's the head of the European Commission. She used to be the German defense minister. She's sort of a superwoman with about 7 kids. And she's also the daughter of a very sort of prominent political family, the Albrechts. And I think Albrecht was the governor of, the prime minister of one of the states in Germany, I think North Rhine-Westphalia. So she has a sort of, and I don't think this is her at all. This is another von der Leyen. I have been Googling a bit, and there are other von der Leyens. But see, the other name here is Rommel. Like, the 2 Rommels that immediately come to mind, father, son, Ernst Rommel of World War II fame, and his son, Manfred Rommel, who was a very beloved Stuttgart mayor and sort of had a kind of impact beyond being mayor of Stuttgart. He maybe had other offices that I don't know, but he was beloved. People really liked Manfred Rommel. I don't know what party he was. Was he CDU? Probably CDU. But sort of like he had a popularity that transcended his political party. I'm not saying that that's him either, although I did find out that he was taken prisoner by the French. And so the last thing on here, I thought in the beginning it was saying farewell, but I think it's a town called Altusried in Bavaria. And it was either in Altusried itself that was a French prisoner of war camp. But the thing is, he was very young when he was taken prisoner of war, just like my father. He was 16. And he was a prisoner of war of the French, but they quickly kind of glommed onto him as being not that culpable and also having talents that they needed. I think he kind of made friends almost with the officers there. Although, was he, but even though he was so young, I don't know. I think that's what I found out. So I found out that, but I don't know if this is him. Weird, interesting. And then the von der Leyens have a connection to a town a little ways over, called Waal, W-A-A-L, but I think it might be a different family, a more aristocratic family of von der Leyens, because Ursula has her name from her husband, Heiko von der Leyen, and there's different branches of the same name, just like there's different people called Grimm, and see, there may be other people called Rommel too, but it is sort of interesting that it says this, and then, last but not least, even on the book, it says 1945, and then there's another von der Leyen who signed it. I mean, it's the same lady probably. And we were trying to figure out, I asked on Twitter what people think that this is the first name. Is it Hilde or Heidi or Hildegard? Hilde, short for Hildegard von der Leyen. And there is one of those, and maybe it's her. And there's also a Germanist called Friedrich von der Leyen, but I don't know. And it doesn't really matter, but it just sort of adds to the mystery of this free book that I found in a free bookshop in my part of Heidelberg. It's a find. So those are my 3 books that I've gone on for you. And it's kind of niche stuff, so I don't know how many of you will really be interested, but I was interested. And yeah, so this will be goodbye from this little location. And next week I will be back in my hotel location for one more German chronicle. And then we'll be back with the kitties, which will also be delightful. They're hopefully he's doing okay. I haven't talked to him, but hopefully they're not suffering from the heat too much. And I have to make sure that he's looking after my Lucinda, my one house plant that I got. Anyway, that's all for me today. Hopefully everyone is doing well, and comment away whatever is of interest to you. I know this is a kind of a strange read this week, strange group of texts. And I will talk to you very soon. Thank you all for watching. And thanks for all the nice comments about the vlog yesterday of going to see Claudia. And yeah, I'll see you soon. Auf Wiedersehen. Bye-bye.